Hello, it's Mystic, and welcome back for another one of my 150 script challenge, where I read scripts and talk about them, from a writer's perspective, and just having a little fun in the flavor of being a writer, reading other people's work and sharing with you as we all grow to get used to how movies are being presented from a writer's perspective. Films I pick are going to be very different. Some are going to be drama, some are going to be sci-fi. I'm trying to pick all kinds of different things. So as you listen, you can comment. If you have some requests, you have a specific script you'd like me to look at, please feel free to drop it in the comment section, and I'll take a look at what you guys have in mind. I'm open to reading just about anything except corn. I don't want to read scripts from corn, but otherwise I'm pretty open. But before we get started on this episode's script, let's stop and take a minute to talk about the sponsor. Sponsor right now is dōTERRA, and I talk about the importance all the time of having a ritual in your writing to ground yourself, to clear your mind, to be in a space of peace and focus so that you can write. And I can tell you, you're not alone if life gets chaotic. It gets chaotic. We all have stuff that's going on in our lives. And in order to be able to sit down and be creative, sometimes we need to take a moment to create the space to be creative. If you do that, you will find that the juices will flow a little better. And for me, nothing works better than having the entire environment supporting that energy of peace and tranquility. And few things do that for me better than essential oils. Now, I am a very spiritual person. I burn incense, I meditate, and sometimes the smoke can be kind of heavy with the incense, or some of us burn sage. If you live in a small place, you have smoke detectors, then that can make it even more challenging. And if you have family members who are allergic to smoke, that can be challenging. But I find with essential oils, you can not only help ground your space, get yourself in a nice relaxing state, but it also just sometimes can just really smell great. And whether you are working with florals, or you're working with kind of more woodsy, or you're working with fruity, lemons and citrusy flavors, whatever works for you to support the space you want to create, I highly recommend it. And some of them have some really great natural medicinal support. I use eucalyptus a lot when it comes to nasal congestion, because I do get allergies and it's summertime. So sometimes putting some eucalyptus in the air can help me, with some of the allergies that I get caught up in as the wind is blowing around where I live. This month, our oils are lemon, frankincense, and lavender. I love that combination for setting the tone of the space. So I will be talking about that throughout the month. I'll be sharing some links with you. I'll share with you a link where you can go and pick up some oils. If you want to reach out to me, I'll also have my contact information. If you're looking for some advice, you just want some information. But I highly recommend including essential oils in your rituals as a writer, or even if you just want to lift up the energy around your house and just have some really good vibes going on. So that's our sponsor. Let's get into our 150 script challenge. Okay, so this session is a fun one. I like to say that some stories are Shakespeare, some are food for the spirit, some are food for thought, and some are just pure, unapologetic entertainment. That's what we're going to do today, is just cover a script for something that is just pure, unapologetic entertainment. Ladies and gentlemen, theys and them, welcome to Krampus. So I'll admit it, when I first watched this movie, I wasn't expecting much. I'm a horror movie fan, and I'm also a holiday fan. And being a Gen Xer, I grew up with a lot of really great horror movies that came out during the holiday season. So I was really expecting kind of just a scare fest. And I really enjoyed this movie. I loved the fact that it was just, it's just a fun, great horror flick, especially one that blends horror and humor and dread. I loved the evil Christmas demon. I mean, I loved all of that. It felt like it could go either way when I was watching it, when I first started watching it. And by the end of the film, I actually was quite entertained. So I decided to add this to my 150 script challenge because I thought it would just be really fun to read the script and walk through it and, just have some fun with you. So we're going to go through Krampus together, and hopefully we will learn some things, and maybe you go out and watch it if you haven't watched it, and you can let me know what you think. I mentioned that I watched it, and a lot of the films that I do the scripts on, I have watched. I pick some sometimes that I haven't seen, but I watch films a lot, so that's kind of hard for me to find a script to a film that I haven't seen. But when I watched it again, it reminded me of an old school horror film. They weren't just scary, they were kind of stylized. They had vibe, they had moods, the kind that they weren't afraid to mix some practical effects with humor and dark stuff. And this one had dark fairy tale vibes and all twisted together in this crazy holiday package. So when it came time to choose a script to analyze, like I said, I had to choose this one because as a writer, this script for me, I thought it would be fun to read. So I picked up the script and I looked at it just initially. I kind of do a quick run over before I get into analysis. I'm like, this script is different. This is an unusual script. So you may not understand what I mean if you haven't had a chance to look at this script, but it's really unusual. It stands out because it really does break the rules as far as I'm concerned, and it really gets away with it. There's ways that we're taught to write, and there's ways that we're taught not to write. And every once in a while, you'll grab a script from somebody and you're like, wow, this is really different. How did they get away with it? And it really is a testimony to the old adage that rules are made to be broken. Because for me, I personally feel like they did a really great job of putting this story together, and the filmmakers did a great job of presenting it on the screen. So let's get down to the nitty gritty real quick right here. Krampus was written by Todd Casey, Michael Dougherty, and Zach Shields. And again, it's not your average screenplay. It leans into voice a little more than your average screenplay does. It kind of reads more like a scary bedtime story than a conventional script. The descriptions are rich, stylized, and sometimes a little cheeky. The tone is baked into every line, every image, and every scare. And again, that's not normal for a screenplay because the imagery is not visceral. The imagery is not real on a screenplay. A screenplay is basically a blueprint. It's instructions. It's what the director takes and creates the movie for you as the viewer to see. So when we watch the film, we don't know all the stuff that was in the screenplay. So if there's lots of visual play in the screenplay, we don't really know that as the viewers. In many ways, in film school, what I've learned is it's a waste of time and it's discouraged. But, beneath all of it, all the fun and fear, this script has heart, it has structure, and an emotional pulse that connects everything together. Through this episode, I'm going to take you through the script of Krampus through my heart of the story analysis method. So the script opens with Max, the main character, clinging to his belief in Christmas, while everyone else in his life is completely checked out. The family is stressed, divided, cynical, and the holidays appear to have become a chore, not joy. Kind of something most of us can probably relate to. The inciting incident happens pretty early on, and it happens when Max is humiliated during the pre-holiday dinner when his heartfelt letter to Santa is read out loud at the dinner table. The other young kids give him a hard time. He rips it up and throws it into the wind. Like so many stories of horror, you go from the inciting incident, and that's when the action usually happens. Sometimes it takes a while, whether a monster's attacking or there's an earthquake, whatever it is. But this story takes no prisoners. After the inciting incident, a supernatural storm arrives and the neighborhood freezes over. And it's at this point Krampus comes to town. We're not told who Krampus is. We're not told what Krampus is. We just know that Krampus has come to town and it's not going to be fun. Later on, at the midpoint, Beth disappears. Beth is a member of the family, and she goes out into the storm and vanishes. It's at that point that the family realizes that they're under siege. Plot point 2, the family begins to fight back. So we go from Beth disappearing to the family realizing that they're under siege to them fighting back. That's how fast this story takes place. But when you read the script, you go from Max, the young boy who's dreaming of a perfect Christmas, wanting to have that perfect Christmas that every little child dreams of. Being around his family, they're bickering, they're cynical, and they just completely spoil the holiday spirit. After the arguments, he loses faith. He makes a grumbly noise and he throws this letter out into the wind. It's this action that causes the onslaught of Krampus. Now I want to go back, and I have my script, my notes here, because again, this was a fun script to read because it's so visual, and the seed planting that the authors do in this script. One of the fun things, they did this in the movie, and I was curious to see if they did this in the script. And yes, in the script, they are watching A Christmas Carol. And as this stuff starts to happen, they're on the scene where Jacob Marley's ghost comes and visits Scrooge, right as the inciting incident is about to take place. Brilliant. Brilliant, because for me, as I'm reading this, his family is being presented as Scrooge, as he is trying to get them to see the spirit of Christmas. And what better background noise to have while this is going on than Jacob Marley trying to warn Scrooge that he needs to recognize the magic of Christmas. Brilliant. And so, of course, while all this is going on, you have kind of the normal family dynamics that we all have to deal with. You know, the sister and her family coming together. They're not really getting along. There's some discomfort. There's some family noise that we really don't get to dive a lot into, but it's there. And all that's important because, like any good story, they all have to come together during the film, during the storytelling, to save each other, to rescue each other, to survive. And great storytelling and horror will do that. So they did a great job of doing that. So then we get to plot point 2, again, where the family fights back. Max becomes the emotional center. He becomes the pivot point that everything revolves around, because Max is the only one who truly represents the spirit of Christmas, right? Our resolution, Max wakes up, it's Christmas morning, the family is here, the music is playing, everything is all better. Now, we get that wonderful horror movie moment, everything's all better, but is it? Throughout the movie, we get this crusty, rusted bell that basically is the herald for Krampus. When he comes downstairs with his family, I think it's downstairs, he notices the bell. And that's when they realize that they have been captured by Krampus and that they are now a part of the curse, part of the legend that the nightmare for them has just begun. So the protagonist in this story is Max, the young boy, and his arc is really simple. He wants one thing: for his family to believe in Christmas again. Not the gifts, not the pageantry, but the meaning of Christmas. The obstacle for him in his arc is the cynicism, the conflict, emotional neglect. His family is too busy fighting and coping to care. Cynicism, conflict, emotional neglect, divorce, family discourse. His family is too busy, engaged in all of that, to be able to stop and engage with him on the meaning and the spirit of Christmas. We reach a point in the story where he gives up hope. And when he gives up hope, it costs him everything. But as the world around him falls apart, Max actually grows. He becomes the protector, the believer, and the one willing to sacrifice. By the end of the story, Max is transformed. Not just braver, but more connected to what truly matters: love, sacrifice, and family. The antagonist and conflict. Krampus is the antagonist, but more than that, he is a symbol. He represents the consequence of losing faith. He shows up because Max gives up, and his arrival forces the family to face their emotional fractures. Krampus doesn't just punish, he judges, he tests, he reveals, and in doing so, he forces Max to confront his own disillusionment and to overcome it. So is there a hero's journey in Krampus? I say yes, there is. I'm going to just do a very loose interpretation of the hero's journey. The call to adventure in Krampus is Max tearing up the letter and summoning Krampus. The refusal of the call is when the family is denying that anything supernatural is happening. They point to weather anomalies, discourse in the community, anything and everything other than supernatural occurrences, which, as in any good horror story, they lose time and end up falling victim to Krampus. The mentor is Omi, the grandmother who speaks German, we think, and nothing else, who tries to warn them of what's coming because she is a survivor from her childhood, so she knows what Krampus is. The trials. They are attacked by creatures one by one. Krampus comes to town with all his little elves and crazy things and boxes and clowns and all kinds of joyous Christmas, wonderful stuff that turns into a nightmare. The revelation, Max realizes he must face Krampus and own his part in this story. In the return, he wakes up on Christmas morning, changed forever. So that's just my basic rundown of the hero's journey. The primary themes with Krampus: belief versus cynicism, the true spirit of Christmas, family unity, sacrifice and redemption, and hope. Krampus reminds us when we stop believing in each other, something dark takes its place. The key emotional beats are what I call the heartbeat. Max writes his letter with love and hope and sincerity. His heartbreak is when it's torn apart, even though he's the one who tore it apart. Also, Omi's haunting story of her own encounter, because she does reveal what happened to her as a child and what she witnessed in her village growing up when Krampus visited her family many, many moons ago. The moment Max decides to sacrifice himself, and then the eerie silence of the quote-unquote happy ending. And, I don't say spoiler alerts. My assumption is when you come to a podcast where we're reading a script that you're prepared for spoiler alerts, but the happy ending isn't real. The happy ending is an illusion. And that too is a theme when you think about how writers write, is it an illusion, or is Christmas an illusion that we've lost sight of a long time ago anyway? It's really very interesting the way they put this together. Some of the symbolisms in the film script here: the letter itself represents Mac's faith. The bell that heralds Krampus is a reminder of consequence, because you only hear the bell if you have been chosen by Krampus. Then the firelight. There's scenes built into this script where they stay by the fire. They have to keep the fire lit to keep things from coming down the chimney, and they stay by the fire for warmth and for protection. And that firelight representing hope and belief. And then the snowmen. There are many times where the snowmen are out on the lawn. They look out and there are these snowmen all over the neighborhood, and they are the watchers. They're always watchers before something wicked comes. So at the end of the day, when I look for the connection, I look for the heartbeat, the thematic connection in this whole script. After reading it umpty times to do this analysis, for me, the heartbeat of this story is belief. It's the magic of the season, yes, but more importantly, it's belief in each other. And it's about what happens when we give up on kindness, love, and tradition. When we forget how to connect and we forget how to love each other. Krampus arrives not just as punishment, but as a wake-up call. And in the end, in the climax and resolution, when Max faces Krampus and offers himself up as a sacrifice, he is no longer playing the role of a passive child. He's ready to act, to love, and to believe. And then his reward for that sacrifice, for that stand up, for that absolute heroic stance, is that he wakes up safe and sound, and Christmas is back to normal. Or maybe not, because the bell tells us something happened, and it's not over. So my final thoughts on Krampus is, Krampus may be a little messy and wild and full of, snowbound chaos, but beneath this script, these writers put together a pretty darn good story. Beneath all the screams and laughs, and this is a really emotionally interesting story. The symbolism is really good. I am a writer who loves symbolism. And as I read this, I was finding little bits and pieces all over the place. To do this sort of a video, it's really hard to go through the whole script. Scripts are long and it's a lot of detail. And I recommend you pull it down and read it. It's a really interesting script to read. And, it's a story about broken families, lost hope, and what it means to fight for joy in a world that's forgotten how. And that's why it works. So that's the heart of the story. And I also want to add that after reading this again, and I want to remind you, I read these scripts multiple times before I do these videos. That's why it takes me so long sometimes to put one up, because I don't want to miss anything, and I'm still missing a lot of stuff. And I might do another video just to talk about some of these scripts a little more, maybe do a live where we can talk about them together. But this is one of those scripts where when you really understand some of the visuals and some of the themes that this script is possibly covering, I say that there is no better time than today where we need to be reminded of hope. So I will place a link in the descriptions where you could go and find scripts to look at and read and download. I always recommend that you do so. It is an invaluable exercise for a writer who wants to improve their ability to tell stories, and especially screenwriters, because it's how you learn to write better scripts. And it's just for fun. It's also a really nifty thing to do. So in the meantime, thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this video. I look forward to the next one. I've got a handful of scripts here that I'm working on, so we'll see what the next one is. And as always, please subscribe, hit the like button, make sure you hit that notification bell, and say what you need to say. Ask me what you need to ask me, but please leave a comment. I appreciate you coming by. You could visit lots of YouTube channels. I appreciate you visiting mine. I'll see you next time. Take care. Love you, and bye for now.